Janice, welcome in. Question for David.
Yes, thank you so much for taking my question and for this program. I feel like it's such an education. Every time, Mark, you host anything, I feel like my learning level has so greatly increased. So deeply grateful. David, so appreciative of being able to track your work and dive into that. Again, I'm a total novice with tariffs. My question is fairness, like around the world, what to do with the tariffs that other countries, so it's supposed to be free trade, right? But is there a concern about somehow leveling out the tariffs that are put upon us and create more of a fairness instead of maybe more the objective of getting ahead and making America wealthy, that line, but more just leveling the field with honest back and forth, treating each other with tariffs and goods and trade?
It's a great question, and I have very strong opinions about it. I think that you frame the question exactly right, where you're not presenting unfairness as a byproduct of one country selling us more than we sell them. You're referring to if they charge a certain tax on imports from us, then how do we deal with the unfairness of us not charging that tax on them? And I have an answer for that, but it's a different issue than what is often presented as unfairness. I categorically reject the idea that there is anything unfair about us buying more from another country than they buy from us. That, in fact, it is a sign of how wealthy as a country we are. And that the only times we run a trade surplus is when we're in recession. And that the countries that have trade surpluses, by and large, are not countries we're trying to emulate economically. The fact of the matter is that buying more from someone else is not in and of itself unfair or even inherently problematic. And there are various economic reasons why it's often a wonderful thing. It makes us richer as a country and enhances our quality of life. But your point on fairness is, what about when a country is representing some sort of unfair deal? And this was the argument largely on China in 2018. I have to answer philosophically, because it's the way I was raised, that there's first principles at play. And the question I always have is, who is supposed to determine what's fair and unfair? You and I every day transact in the marketplace. And if I go to a place to get my hair cut and they want to charge a certain tax or service fee on that, and I don't want to pay it, and there's another place that doesn't, I get to choose. And I understand that the analogy is not exactly the same, but there is a principle at play that in a market economy, we believe the actors in a transaction are going to determine what's fair and unfair. And what has historically not been a conservative orthodoxy is the idea that 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue is the arbiter of fairness. Now, at a high level, people can just say, you can say all that Milton Friedman stuff all you want, but if they're charging a 50% tariff and we're not, that's unfair. I take that superficially, but you have to also wonder what other factors go into that. But then I still come down to what I said to the prior individual asked a question. I believe it to be a non sequitur to say we're going to solve for the unfairness of what that country is doing to their consumers, that we're going to now do the same to our consumers. In other words, as much as I love the idea of evening a playing field, leveling a playing field, trying to find some definition of fairness, even if I have to bite a bullet and pretend I believe that the executive branch of government gets to determine fairness in economic transactions, I still don't accept that we're creating fairness by punishing other actors in our economy. And that is ultimately what I believe they do. So I don't mean to wax and wane so much philosophically on tariffs. There's plenty of reasonable people that disagree. And the largest issue here is that, to the extent much of this has been presented by Secretary Bahnsen and by President Trump himself as a means to an end of getting to a place of less tariff, not more, better negotiations on other domestic policy objectives, the fentanyl thing that was in the headlines over a month ago. If that's where we were headed here, I don't have an issue. But if we were talking about leaving more permanent impediments to trade on the table, whether in the name of fairness or protectionism, then I do disagree.
Janice, thank you.